I know you love earning travel rewards and cash back, and that's why you're going to love Rakuten. With Rakuten, you can earn cash back on everything you need to book your dream trip, hotels, flights, rental cars, experiences, and more, while still booking through your favorite travel sites. And don't worry, cash back can be earned on top of earning the credit card points and the hotel and airline loyalty points that matter most to you, depending on how you make your booking. Plus, with Rakuten, you can also earn cash back on groceries and other purchases like electronics, pet supplies, and more. And the best part, you can join today for free and start earning cash back on top of your travel rewards. Go to Rakuten.com or get the app. That's Rakuten, Rakuten. Rakuten, the most rewarding way to shop.
This episode is brought to you by TaxAct. Don't do your taxes alone. Join TaxAct's National Admin Night. Admin nights are social gatherings for getting through your to-do list. So get ready for a night of fun, finding deductions, and filing taxes with TaxAct, where you can file your federal and state return for just $49 through April 8. Let's get together and get them over with. Visit taxact.com/admin-night for details.
What I would like to get to is unlocking the power within all of us to make each travel experience life-changing.
That is today's amazing guest, Dr. Kristina Wachter, an award-winning professor, best-selling author, and expert in cross-cultural communication, which is today's topic. You can learn more about her and her organization over at crosscultureconnections.com, where they, quote, help people navigate cultures with confidence and communicate across differences rooted in trust, dignity, respect, and human connection. Her proprietary culture spin method has empowered organizations and individuals across continents to transform cultural obstacles into competitive advantages. We're going to dig into that spin method today, where, among other things, you'll also discover advice for recovering from cultural mistakes when you make them, how to avoid destroying the cultural bridges you are trying to build, how one businessman recovered from a very expensive cultural faux pas when he unknowingly drank $300,000 worth of tea in 15 minutes. Who knew that tea could be that expensive? And also how another businessman lost millions of dollars in 30 seconds when a joke that would fly in his home culture didn't quite land the same way in another part of the world. How to find, quote, cultural courage, and loads more. Plenty of actionable and practical tips around how to connect deeper with cultures all over the world, which can lead to richer travel experiences, success in cross-cultural business settings. And also in the process, you may be surprised, you're going to learn a bit more about your own culture, perhaps even seeing parts of yourself in a new light. All coming at you today, right now in this episode. So buckle up, strap in. Thanks for being here, and welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend.
You're listening to the Zero to Travel podcast, where we explore exciting travel-based work, lifestyle, and business opportunities, helping you to achieve your wildest travel dreams. And now your host, world wanderer and travel junkie, Jason Moore.
Hey, it's Jason here with ZeroToTravel.com. Welcome to the show. Thanks for hanging out, letting me bring a little travel into your ears today. This is the show to help you travel the world on your terms, to fill your life with as much travel as you desire, no matter what your situation or experience. Speaking of travel, I'm just back from my home country, the United States. I was in Austin, Texas for South by Southwest, going to some podcast events there, and it was a good time, nice and warm. Got to miss out on the last week of winter, basically, here in Norway. I mean, it's still a little chilly, but a lot of the snow is gone, so the sun's shining. I'm getting vitamin D on my face instead of in pill form, and that's always a good thing. As you heard at the top, Dr. Kristina Wachter is here, and you might be surprised she got into this line of work. It began with a big cultural mishap of her own. Let's say that. You'll hear the story at the top of this interview, along with everything else I mentioned and more. And on the back end of this, if you want to stick around after the conversation, which I do think is very value-packed in this one, a lot of takeaways in this one, I will share, just for fun, a cultural mishap of my own. I mean, I've had so many. I can't even count them living abroad It happens all the time. And this one even happened amongst friends at home at a meal. Even in a setting that you would think is comfortable and something like this wouldn't happen, it still does. So you'll hear that story and get, of course, advice to avoid these situations or just do a better job of connecting with cultures when you travel, which is something I'm always looking to improve on myself. You really want to have that authentic cultural immersion as much as possible. And a lot of takeaways in this one. So thanks for being here. We're going to get into it in a second. Quick reminder, zerototravel.com/newsletter for our free newsletter. And now let's dive into this conversation. I'll see you on the other side, my friend. Cheers.
Flight down to Nassau today is going to be 16 minutes. We ask you to please remain seated outside with your seatbelts securely fastened for the entire flight. For your safety, this speech 19 address equipped with 4 emergency exits, 2 over the right way, 1 over the left when the door you entered. On behalf of Pernapole and this flight crew, we'd like to thank you for flying with us this morning, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight.
Dr. Kristina Wachter, welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate it.
Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed at 5 a.m. in Salt Lake City. Did you grow up in that area, or?
Yes, I did grow up in this area, but I've been all over the world and lived in various places in the world, and now I'm based here as well as Green Bank, Washington, in the U.S.
Utah is an incredibly beautiful state. It should be more on the radar. Perhaps it is now, but I've had so many incredible road trips through Utah. Have you gotten to explore a lot of the state?
Oh, that's how I grew up. In fact, my grandfather was the inspiration behind this. He would take us on road trips throughout Utah, and we'd go on the back roads and find, go beyond Moab. And so Utah has everything. We have the snow. We have the Olympics coming here in 34. So, it will be more on everyone's radar there. But greatest snow on earth, and we have our beautiful southern Utah and rustic, classic westerns, scenes. It's beautiful. I love it here. It's absolutely it's incredible. You can do everything here except for go to the beach, and that is one of the reasons we go to Washington.
Right. Yeah, it was the only place I experienced what they called upside down snow, and I was skiing at Alta at one point. They had It was like heavy on the top and light underneath, so you couldn't pull your skis out of the powder. It was like 19 inches of snow, by the way. Epic day, super difficult. I was not at all prepared for it. We're not doing an episode focused on Utah, although we could talk about culture within the United States as well. Maybe you could apply some of this stuff, because we do tend to think of going to the United States, I think, as like a homogenous experience. And it can seem that way sometimes when you land at the Walmart in, whatever, Madison, or the Walmart in Florida. You're like, I don't even know where I could be anywhere in the US right now. But culturally speaking, not so much.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you could go from one state to the other, and you go to the same strip mall where there's a Starbucks, a Target, and whatever the base stores are. But the people that you're dealing with are so very different. I have one client right now this is a domestic client, and they're based in Tempe, Arizona, in the southwestern United States. And they're building in the northwestern United States a commercial project in Oregon. And then they're bringing from the southeastern employees from the southeastern United States, from Florida. And there's a huge culture conflict between the people from Florida and the people in Oregon. So yes, the United States has homogeneity, but it's not homogenous at all.
Yeah. I do want to get your take on kind of what you want to cover today and what people are going to walk away from specifically with this. But I have to ask you before we kind of dive into all that, because you're an expert in cross-cultural education. You have over 25 years of experience as a award-winning university professor in cultural foundations. I mean, you live and breathe conversations around culture. We're going to talk about, cultural courage and a bunch of things today. But for you, I'm just wondering personally, what is your why? Like, when did you realize you were so interested in bridging cultural connections in the work that you do now?
It started a long time ago, back in the 90s. And it was the first time I went to Europe. And I was so excited. I had not been out of the country. I'd been to various states. And as I mentioned, throughout my own state a lot. So it was an important trip. I was going to a funeral of a person, which, is kind of a shocking way to get introduced to a new culture. But I thought that I had it all because this was an important time to network as well. The person was important. I was going to meet business leaders. I was freshly graduated from university. And so I dressed the part. I put on a power suit from the 90s, with the big shoulder pads, big buttons. And I stepped into this ready to network. Plus, I was meeting my then boyfriend, now husband's family for the first time. The stakes were very high. And so I show up at the funeral and I'm wearing a red suit and I stand out in a sea of black and brown, black and brown attire everywhere. That was my first lesson in cultural incompetency. And from that point forward, I decided I was not going to be that person again that stood out so clearly and didn't get it. I still won't. We still make mistakes. We make mistakes in our own culture, but the drive for me right now is I want to create a positive space in our world. That is my legacy. It has been with my students. We can create change. Put yourself on a positive trajectory through human connection. And you have to get people on a cultural level in order to initiate change.
Okay. Well, that's what we're going to discuss today. I'm sure various nuances around exactly what you just laid out. I think to me, this is relevant on multiple levels. I mean, on a travel level, of course, being a traveler, showing up somewhere, wanting to be able to connect with the culture in a certain way, perhaps not make these cultural faux pas as you just described, but also in some ways less about, worrying about embarrassing yourself because that's probably going to happen, but more just about, hey, how can we really connect to this place and its people? And then also, this is a global economy. So the chances that you, the listener, all of us here need to collaborate with people from other countries, it's way higher than it has been in the past. And you have some really interesting terms that you discuss and some philosophies that you discuss on your website, crossculturalconnections.com. And you got the book, Culture Spin, your 4-step toolkit for global leadership and cross-cultural success. And I just got to lean on you here a bit because you've been doing this for so long. What is our goal here with this conversation today? What do you want to cover? What specifically can people walk away with after listening to this by the time they're done? How will it help them?
What I would like to get to is unlocking the power within all of us to make each travel experience life-changing. And I've created a method over the years to give you a playbook, and it's a personalized playbook. It's a boutique approach where you learn how to uncover elements within yourself so that you can connect to other people. And then your travel experience is more meaningful. And, from a business perspective, it's much more profitable. If you can make the connections and form a cultural bridge, you're making more money. If you're traveling personally or you're moving to a new country, it gives you more, not just satisfaction, but you're more likely to succeed and stay and reach your goals that you have in moving, or if your company sends you to a new country, because there's typically a pretty high failure rate for that. From the US, it's about a 75% failure rate when it costs $3 to $5 million to send an executive abroad from the US.
Oh, wow.
So that's a hefty price tag. When you invest that personally, you're investing a lot of money and your time to move abroad. I mean, you're an expat, it's a big deal and you want to make it work. And so many people don't. So I'm going to give some tips for the playbook. Write your own playbook so that you're adapting on your own terms.
Okay. That sounds like a great plan. I love the initial place you go is that you go to yourself. You're looking within, kind of figuring that out. And then how that's going to fit in with the landscape, I guess, the cultural landscape that you're going to be visiting. One last thing before we dive in. Another reason why I wanted to have you on is that it seems like your work, it bridges not only cultural gaps, but you have the academic background and then you translate that to like specific, actionable, practical stuff on the ground. And so I'm just getting people pumped up because I'm excited and I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, well, it's important. I mean, this is how I've always taught. If you can have theory, but if you can't translate that into practice, it's going to be gone. So putting theory in practice has always been my model. And this is what I love about travel. It's hands-on. You can do that.
I love it. All right. So is the best place to start cultivating cultural courage? Is that sort of a foundational piece or where do you want to?
Yeah. Yeah, we could. In fact, I'll talk to you about courage, and each of us have our own definition of courage, but it's getting out of your headspace and overcoming fear and acting with confidence and control so that you can achieve your goals, as I mentioned before. And what I've developed is the SPIN method, as you mentioned previously, my internationally best-selling book, Culture Spin Method. It's an acronym, SPIN is. And the first part is looking at yourself and getting an honest view of where you are. And you take an inventory of your strengths and weaknesses, but you have to do a personal cultural analysis in order to connect with other analyses. You look at values, beliefs, the basis for your values, and why they're shaped. Look at your stereotypes. What is the source for your stereotypes? And then you also have to flip that and think, okay, what are the stereotypes for me? I unless I'm traveling in Scandinavia because I have my cheekbones of blonde hair, I stand out as an American. I mean, it's obvious that I'm American, and own who you are. Act with authenticity, but also act with humanity and compassion and respect. And that way, if you get a look at yourself, you set the stage for trust. And that's one of the core pillars for connecting cross-culturally.
Okay, so practically speaking, are you saying this process starts at home? Like, just relating this to the traveler here listening, because we could talk about the business aspect of this as well, but I feel like let's start with the travel piece. I think that, you book a trip, let's say it can be anything like around a world trip. You're going to visit multiple countries to going to one place. Is it then sitting down and actually taking some time to write out your sort of stereotypical thoughts on a country? How do you work through the SPIN method?
Okay, this is it. And you nailed it there, Jason. You plan. You have to do this ahead of time. And it's so easy in our age of information to gather information from a variety of sources. You get a sense of the culture. You reflect that. Values are shared. There are some universal values, and not that everyone adheres to them, but like integrity. And but the way that you treat someone with respect or integrity in one country may be different in another country. It looks different. And so if you plan what you're going to do, you plan and you get a feel for the other culture. I mean, one of the things that I love to do is read. And so I read novels that take place in another country, historical fiction from another country. Edward Rutherford is one of my greatest sources for some of the major cities. He does such a great job putting historical fiction with actual events that took place. But at the same time, it's fun. I mean, some of the people that, when I taught in Paris last time, my students were watching that Netflix show, Ask Emily. And I'm like, okay, let's look at what this Emily was doing in Paris, and let's compare that now that we're in Paris to what really is happening here in Paris. And so go to the place, if you're a foodie, look at your food and compare that with their food. So that gets into the P also, which is planning and prioritizing in the SPIN method acronym. And you develop a profile of people and places and practices. But if you connect it in what I call the cultural Venn diagram, you look at your interests and where the overlapping interests are in their country, then you can start to make the connection. That's how you are the first to step forward. And when you step forward first, you're inviting the law of reciprocity and people to join you. So it's just interesting. I mean, for example, one of the things that I like to do when I travel to different places is kayak. And so I research places to kayak. And one of my most unusual kayaking experiences was kayaking along the Thames when I was there a couple of years ago. And that was an incredible way to see London. But I also met people who were not your typical tour guide, and they mainly worked with locals. So it was a great way to do this. And some people that I've interviewed in my research, they go to Facebook groups in the country if they're interested in something. I've interviewed some people who travel with their pets or who are moving with their pets, so they connect with a group of, say, dog lovers in whatever destination they're heading to. and then they can learn, they can get a social base where there's overlap beyond the group of expats that they meet.
We'll get back to the interview in just a moment. I know you love earning travel rewards and cash back, and that's why you're going to love Rakuten. With Rakuten, you can earn cash back on everything you need to book your dream trip, hotels, flights, rental cars, experiences, and more, while still booking through your favorite travel sites. And don't worry, cash back can be earned on top of earning the credit card points and the hotel and airline loyalty points that matter most to you, depending on how you make your booking. Plus, with Rakuten, you can also earn cash back on groceries and other purchases like electronics, pet supplies, and more. And the best part, you can join today for free and start earning cash back on top of your travel rewards. Go to Rakuten.com or get the app. That's Rakuten, Rakuten. Rakuten, the most rewarding way to shop.
This episode is brought to you by Fandango. People say fans are too distracted these days, but the truth is, when a great movie hits the screen, you show up, you stay glued, invested, part of the story. And without fans like you, there'd be no cinema magic, no shared moments. So head to Fandango.com to get tickets, stream, or rent or buy top movies and series. Fandango loves fans.
Now, back to the show. By the way, great book, The Boys in the Boat, since you're a reader.
It is. It's fabulous.
Yeah, did you read that? Okay, yeah, I would recommend that one to anybody. It's about the University of Washington rowing team during the Depression era. Incredible story. Just thinking rowing the Thames, I was flashing back. All right, so here, I'm going to be a guinea pig now, so you can walk me through this, and we could do a real world example. I hope this doesn't sound too selfish to everybody, but I feel like this is a good way to kind of even dive a little deeper.
Yes, you're a case study.
Yeah, so I'm doing some business in China, actually, and it's just starting. And I was thinking, I was writing these emails and going back and forth and things. I was like, I don't know anything about Chinese business culture, or like how, what I'm writing is going to be perceived, all these sort of questions that come up. And then I was thinking about it as a traveler as well. What if I actually went to visit these people one day? How would this all work? And then I was thinking about the interview we had coming up, and I thought, well, this could be a good way to kind of like just go through this as if I was one of your clients, so people can see how like they could sort of apply this same methodology to themselves.
Okay, this is fun. This is what I love to do. I do workshops.
I'm scared.
Okay, putting you on the spot here, Jason. So what I want to know, first of all, is give me a few sentences. What do you know about China?
That's the thing. I don't know much.
Where can you go to find out more?
Other travelers who have been there, for sure.
Mm-hmm. So where do you go? What's your source for the other travelers?
Well, thankfully, I have a big network of other travelers.
Well, you do. But if you were someone, you could look at travel blogs, for example.
Yeah, you could look at travel blogs. You could, you're still getting the Western version of that. So it would be ideal to find perhaps some local travel bloggers if those sites were able to translate well. Perhaps some, I can use air quotes, perhaps some influencers that are genuine, that are able to maybe explain some of the cultural nuances and in a way that resonates with me, I guess, would be some ideas.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So you do that. And then to start to get the feel of culture, you're a reader.
Yeah.
So do you read fiction, nonfiction, both?
Both. I did read the 3 Body Problem series, which was really interesting because it was written by a Chinese author. And I had recently, at that time, done an interview with, you will like this actually, there was a woman who, she had a quest in a year to read a book from every country so she could explore the world in this way. Yeah, it's an episode we have in the feed. It's called Reading the World with Anne Morgan. And she was just wonderful. It was amazing to hear how people rallied to kind of help her out and get her sort of translated copies from places where it was hard to find these stories. Yeah, she kind of opened my eyes to that idea as well. It's like, wow, you can actually... there is some nuance with, okay, how is the book translated? Is it translated in a way that you're still going to get the sort of the rhythm of what the original author has put down, culturally speaking, I guess, right? Because there's a different rhythm, a different cadence to some of these cultures. And so, yeah, and you're right. I mean, that was, when I thought back on that, now that you're bringing it up, that was a good way in to kind of, it was a way in to get a bit of a better understanding, even though it was a fictional story.
Exactly. And then you want to look for authenticity and, watch movies that take place. But one thing that you have to do also, look at what you don't know or what you assume you know about a place at this stage. So if you think about it, I'm not going to have you say this on the air, but because they can be positive or negative, what stereotypes do you have of Chinese business people? What are your expectations? And then you can prepare, okay, what is the source of that? Where did I learn this value system? My beliefs are based on my socialization, my own culture. But at the same time, what I've learned and what you've learned is probably a lot different than what our parents learned, even though we share the same value system probably. But then you look for the overlap, and you can find so much with Google Translate and everything else. You can find a lot of primary sources where you're going, and you can just find day-to-day lives and just accounts, looking at, even if you can't read the language, looking at ads, looking at media from another place. Start tapping into it and look at the images and the people. And of course, you pay attention to the news, but you also look at news from other places. For example, I listen to the BBC to get a different take on what's going on in the US and, or whatever other country I'm going to. So if you go to various news sources, you get a feel for the day to day, but recognize that you're not going to get it. You're not going to get the whole picture. So what do you want to learn? Who are the people? And this is where you start creating the story. This is a plan. Who are the people that you are going to be interacting with? What's the context? And I call this primary characterization. Who are these players? You're the protagonist in your own story. Who are you going to be interacting with? What are they going to do? What demographics matter? Gender matters. You're going to China? You have to take gender into account as you're dealing with business circumstances in a way that you don't in some of the Western countries. And so how to do that? Just basics. Imagine what you're going to be doing on a day-to-day basis and where you're going to be doing it. And think about, okay, I have a business card in my hand. I'm not going to hand it to someone with one hand. You very respectfully use your forefinger and your thumb on both sides of the business card and hand it to them. And to be extra respectful, you have the back of it written in whatever dialect of Chinese that you have. And that shows immediate respect. And it's interesting. And you do some research on cultural things and you look at some of the things. I mean, for example, I don't drink alcohol, and so many business situations are based around alcohol. So you do the research. I'm just doing some work for someone on the border area of Bulgaria and Greece. And, it's so easy to find, okay, what is the non-alcohol protocol? Mineral water, juice, there's so many different things that you can do. And it's okay to say it, but there's a way to say it without offending your host. And it's interesting. I was learning from a man who's retired now, but he used to be one of the world, he was a global executive for UPS. And the first time he went to China, he did not do any research at all besides, these are the people I'm going to see. This is my schedule. And he went to, he was trying to broker a deal with a company in UPS. And he sat down with these people. And this guy, he's wonderful. He's a good old boy. He sits down in this group of Chinese businessmen and they pour him some tea. And he was thinking, okay, he said, my mom had taught me to finish whatever I have on the plate, which is not always necessarily culturally sound. So he would pour tea and he was sucking back the tea, one cup after another. They'd immediately refill it as soon as he drank it. And only at one point when he started to look at their nonverbal communication, where it was universal, like, you're screwing up, buddy. And he said, so he asked him, this is where the key is. You ask. When you're not getting it, you ask. And he said, what am I doing wrong? And so they basically explained to him the hierarchy, and he learned the different roles that each of the players played and how to direct questions to not the CEO, but the other guy that was the CEO's right-hand man first. But anyway, this man drank about $300,000 worth of tea in 15 minutes. They were bringing 50. they were bringing out the best tea in honor of him. And, and that's a whole other thing, gift exchanging. And, you look at, okay, I'm not going to bring a gift to someone to China wrapped in white, because that is representative of death. And some other things in actually a lot of different Asian countries. You look at the gift, the type, you don't take t-shirts promoting your business. You wouldn't have Zero to Travel mugs. Here you go. Here's your gift. It needs to be reflective of the culture. So you would bring something reflective of Oslo that shows genuine connection in China. And then you figure out, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go from here? This is my plan. Then, where am I going to take this to the next level now? What am I going to do with this story? How am I going to make a difference in the world? Once I've bridged this, how am I going to create sustainable relationships? I mean, I listened to one of your podcasts where you had a guest who is walking the world. And that's one of the things that I do. I love walking around because you find the places, you find the niches, you meet people that way. You find you just come upon, a protest or something. And, of course you got to use caution, but by interacting with people, on their terms in their country, you learn so much, and it's self-growth, and it develops a base from which you can draw. So like Jason, if you have a business meeting planned, but where else can you go in the setting where you're going to China that is outside of the office that you can bring into the office and say, oh yeah, I went to, I went to whatever festival, or, ask the concierge not where a good place to eat is, but where the concierge would go to eat, and, to get a local flavor. And then you bring that to your business meeting. And, there are so many ways to connect, but that way you're acting with dignity, you're showing respect, and you establish a basis of trust.
Yeah. That's a great story, the $300,000 tea meeting.
Yes.
I'm sure that guy has told that one many times after that.
I know. It was like the finest French wines were brought to the table, but it was just, yeah. Anyway, needless to say, he did not do it again. And he landed the contract when he showed his ignorance and his willingness to learn.
Well, that's really stood out in that story when he said, what am I doing wrong? It's such a powerful question. I think that's something I really want to highlight, is that, would you say that is sort of the best approach if you're just vulnerable and you just put yourself out there in that way? I imagine that's just can endear you to some of the folks. Like we get it. They don't really know the kind of way to do this.
It's really hard though, because you want to learn, and to show that you're willing to learn and that you want to learn. It's hard because we put up our defenses. We're in a new place. You're hit by a bunch of stimuli that you're not expecting, and you immediately put up your defenses. That's just how we respond physiologically as well. I mean, if you get down to the chemistry breakdown of it, but if you recognize that, for example, if you're getting anxiety and you recognize how your body's responding, then you get yourself past it. But you have it planned ahead. When this is happening, this is how I'm going to act. And what is one of the ways to remedy this? Ask with respect. And I have a million stories, but here's another one of a businessman who went to South Korea, and he met with his counterparts, the business people, and they said, "Well, how do you like South Korea so far?" And he said, in what he thought was a joke, he said, "Well, I love it, but I can't find anywhere to get a decent hamburger." And where can I get a decent hamburger? That's what he asked. So he wasn't asking on their terms. He was inviting a question on his own terms and with his own cultural reference of, I'm from the United States. We eat hamburgers here.
Yeah. Thinking that joke would go over.
Yeah, thinking that, and which, no, it didn't. And he did not get the contract. So it's very interesting because that is how basically he lost millions of dollars in 30 seconds. And that is where you need to plan. If you act ahead of time, you are developing a courage that you can rely on, that allows for weakness that can develop into a strength.
Yeah, I love it. The stories are great because it really brings it to life, the sort of the stakes that on the surface might seem, an innocent joke can turn into that. But, on the business side, that example that you just shared is, there's a specific currency you can tie that to. And I think like the currency we would be missing out on in that case, and as travelers, it might not be a business exchange or a contract, but the opportunity to enhance the travel experience through, a cultural connection that you have on the ground. I think that might be an example of the currency, I'm using air quotes, that you wouldn't miss out on as a traveler.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's cultural capital. It's this currency is cultural capital. You give yourself leverage with the knowledge, with the insights. Even if you learn something, in the fiction that you're reading or the movie that you saw, and that's not the way it is here. That's even a point of topic of conversation, or say, this is the representation. How can we get past this? And deconstruct what the representation is. And, those of us from the United States are not necessarily, speaking like the Valley Girls and so many other stereotypes that they have of people from the US. So it's so fun. And again, going back to that cultural Venn diagram, I contend that each of us can connect with every single person on the planet if we're looking for it. I mean, even if it just comes down to the fact that we all wear skin, there's something about that. And then you build outward from there. And that's like the ripple effect of the pond. I mean, you and I immediately, you're a parent. I'm a parent. We're in different stages of parenting, but still I can relate to you when you were telling me about your two little kids. And so it just made me immediately go back to that time in my life. And, there's the connection. We go from there. And you look at interests beyond the itinerary on your travel guide. Go beyond that to the things that you like. Connect if you start where you like or what you know, and introduce it to someone else based on their terms, which sounds a little contradictory. It's not. This is what I do. How do you do it in your country? I want to connect that way.
Oh yeah, okay. What is SPIN? What is the actual acronym? Just to be clear.
Okay, so the S is self, which is the understanding of self. And then the P is profile and plan. So you're looking at, and it also people comes into play there too. And so you're looking at what do people do there? How do they do it? How can I explore and this is where, with my students, we bring the humanities into this. We look at how people are represented in art. You're going to a museum. Let's look at the history of the place. Let's look at the art and how that represents various socioeconomic classes, for example. And so, you look at the history of the art, and then you can dissect things like an anthropologist at the P stage. And then the I step is where you take things into action. And this is the immersion step. And you're acting with integrity also as another I. So how are you going to do it? And how are you going to do it authentically in a way that is deliberate? So this, again, is getting your playbook in order before you go to the place. Because so many people figure that one of the big mistakes is, I'll figure it out as I go along.
Oh, wing it.
And yeah, exactly. And that does not work. I mean, I could give you more examples of something that happened in Normandy to me with my failure to plan a few years ago. But, and then, just suffice it to say, a teenager named Enzo on a moped helped me out, and I got back on ground.
Nice. Shout out to Enzo.
Enzo, yes, you were wonderful. And so, and then the N, and this is something that, when I was talking to Rick Steves, he's a travel expert here in the U.S. He says I'm a travel writer, but he's like a very, very well-known travel expert. Yeah. And he said, those of us who have the privilege to travel have a responsibility. And my words are to change the world, to change the people. He said, when we come back from wherever we've been, how are we going to act differently? How are we going to influence the people around us in our circle, family, friends, neighbors, community, business associates? How are we going to do that? And that is where the N comes in. And that's planning to take it to the next level now, because you have to act now, now in the present of when you're planning and when you're living the experience abroad. What am I going to do with this? So you don't forget it. And keep a record and, write your story that way and be willing to change your story a lot. But it's an ongoing tale. It does not end with your trip end.
No, that's another fascinating piece to your work is the pre-trip stuff, the planning that you're doing in that phase it's not just an exercise for your experience. I mean, this is the way I'm taking it anyway. It's not just an exercise for your experience on the ground and to try to fit in culturally and take all those things into consideration, but you are actually deconstructing your own cultural constructs, which, like, if you're doing that, you can't help but start asking yourself bigger questions, like perhaps related to your own identity, or, why do I believe these things? What is it about my home culture that made me think this way? It just starts pulling you out into this meta view of who you are within the context of where you are, which adds a whole other dimension to this.
Yes, exactly. I mean, so it is a process of self-discovery as well. And so, this is where an inventory of your weaknesses, things are going to go wrong. You travel, things are going to go wrong. It's guaranteed somewhere along the line. There's going to be a baggage handler strike, or, it's going to be the time for something that happened in London to me a couple of years ago. All the kids were out on summer break the day that I was scheduled to return home. And it messed up my flight, but I knew this could happen. So I had a bunch of work that I could do in the airport. So I spent hours in Heathrow catching up on my work, but I planned ahead of time so that I could contain my anxiety, which I knew I would have if I wasn't busy. So knowing yourself and knowing how to change and adapt in situations, you've got to be, as you well know, you've got to be flexible when you travel, or it's going to make it a very negative experience.
Is this tie in with the term you use, cultural agility?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. And so that's basically your ability to pivot, and you recognize what you're doing wrong, and you make another move. But you don't berate yourself. You don't get down on yourself, or, oh, you're so stupid. Why did you do that? And, double checking yourself. You look at this. Okay, this is a situation. This is what I can do differently. This is what, okay, like the guy that I talked to you about, that the cultural agility has was showing humility and saying, what am I doing wrong? Or you ask someone, you are in a situation, with the situation with Enzo, getting out Google Translate, that helped, move with cultural agility. And then there were some other overlaps in our cultural Venn diagram, and he really saved the day. So you have to be able to pivot.
We'll get back to the interview in just a moment.
Refreshing wild cherry cola meets smooth cream. The treat you deserve. Pepsi Wild Cherry and Cream. Treat yourself.
Now, back to the show. Okay, well, what about, here's a real world scenario, another real world example for me, being somebody who's now living in Norway, originally from the US, a Norwegian citizen, been here for a while, speak Norwegian to a certain extent. I still get the sidelong glances sometimes from my neighbors or somebody if I do something wrong, but yet I'm probably past the point of saying, what did I do wrong? Because that would just be awkward, because they're like, dude, you live here. Like, you
Yeah.
you can't really play that card. But sometimes I sense, what I'm saying is coming out in a weird way to them, because I'm translating. If we're talking about language, I'm using an expression that perhaps they don't use, or they have these expressions that are, similar, but they might use different animals, or like a different analogy or metaphor, within the expression. And then it just gets lost in translation. For the expat, for the person that's like, a nomad, and they're spending, multi months in a place, and people know they've been around, and they still are making these mistakes, which will happen.
We make mistakes in our own culture.
What's your tact there? Yeah, that too,
Okay, well, that's where I start. I think, okay, we make faux pas all the time in our own culture. How do you respond to that? You said the wrong thing to the wrong person in your native culture. How do you react? And then that's part of your agility. I need to do that within this culture based on the characteristics and the behavior patterns. I mean, one of the things, when I was actually in Oslo this past summer, and, we
could have done this in person.
I wish we did. Dang. I wish I knew you then. Yes. But I had done the research. That was my first time to Norway, and I'd done the research on Norwegians, and I put it to the test. And And I knew this was wrong. When I was out on my run, when I go on walks or runs, that again, to see the city and going places where the locals go. And I was running, and I would look at the dog walkers, and I love dogs. And I was missing my dog, I have a Great Dane. She's a rescue dog. She's great. But anyway, so I would look at them, and I have an outgoing, exuberant personality, and it's hard for me to contain that. And so I would say, something about, I would point to the dog, and I would just say, try to give some nonverbal communication and say, or say, your dog is so cute. And, that's just not how you communicate in Norway. And so I learned a little while just to give the nod and look at the dog, look at the person. And, it was just that's a simple example, but it's part of the mundane. So just look at other people, what they are doing, and look at the reactions and temper it.
Yes, I can relate to that so well. That story. I mean, yeah, they just, Norwegians, they're not used to people coming up and just bantering with them on the street. And us Americans, we kind of banter with everybody. And that was a really hard thing to get used to for me. And, I've found that even though I've been here for a while, this is another part of this that I think is interesting. I've been able to connect, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I feel like I've been able to connect with cultures on a different level when sometimes I do something that they don't expect, but they appreciate. And almost you could imagine like they wish it was a little bit more of a part of their culture. Like that somebody, because people get lonely. Like it's nice to talk to somebody on the street, and I feel like this is an example in Norway. It's not like everybody, generally speaking, people aren't like invading their personal space in that way. From what I've read, it seems like that's like their version of being polite is kind of like to leave that person alone. Whereas our version of being polite is to kind of just, hey, how you doing? Or maybe just like a what's up or a nod or whatever, or to come up and say your dog's so cute and just, connect with a fellow human. Not necessarily something they're used to, but I have found that if it's done in the right way, they also seem to appreciate it. And there's almost like you get like a little bit of a cultural free pass. And those free passes can really help you connect because, I can be open with this person. He's not a fellow Norwegian. He doesn't understand that. And okay, now we're in this conversation. So cool.
Yeah. Yes. And that is where the law of reciprocity comes into play. You act one way, and it's human nature. There are always outliers, of course, but it's human nature to respond in kind and in the same way. And it's if you take the first step and you do it with respect and having a basic understanding of the culture instead of, say the American getting in the face of a person from Finland and saying, okay, this is so wonderful. And just, being on, completely on in an American way, but starting slowly. And, I'm going from my own experience in Finland that you slowly allow more of your personality, and they see this, but it's a process. It's not something that happens immediately. And sometimes we don't have that in our travel circumstances. So sometimes we mess up. We've just got to learn and think, okay, I learned this. Next time I go to another place, I need to learn how to behave in whatever situation.
Right. I just want to give the travelers listening some love just for being brave to get out there and even give it all a go. I mean, on that note, we mentioned the term cultural courage, but I'd love for you to, I know this is a foundational concept for you, if you could just share what that is and why.
Yes. If you're acting with cultural courage, you're acting with confidence, you're in control of the situation, and you have the ability to absorb what is happening around you with an open mind. And that is something deliberate, and that requires you to step out of your comfort zone. That is basically it. You're acting with courage when you step out of your comfort zone in a very deliberate way so that you are inviting this system of reciprocity. You're inviting this process of self-development. You're looking at things. Okay, this is how I view. This is how I act in a business situation. Or this is, for example, this, and going to the familiar again, you go to perhaps a church that may be your religion, may not be your religion in a place, but if you respect the religiosity, you are acting with courage. You may be going, I go to various churches when I, my own as well as other religions, so that I get a sense of the humane. You can get the humanity in a church so easily, but you're acting in a way. It's hard sometimes to go into a new place, and you need to know, okay, I need to have my arms covered or my shoulders covered, whatever the rule may be. But it's still acting out of your comfort zone, but with deliberate planning behind you so that it's purposeful.
Yeah. Did we miss any big concepts that you want to share here? Or, speaking of bridging gaps, I want to fill all the gaps here.
Okay, we've done a good job. We've got a bridge started here, but I could talk to you for hours. This is so fun. But I think we've covered the basics of what you need to do, and it's so great. It's such a powerful experience. The tagline on a textbook that I wrote for my university students is "Discover the human side of business," and you can take that anywhere. Discover the human side of travel. And that is where you make human connection. And that is where you leave a positive imprint. And that's where you see your influence to do good in this world that has so much negativity.
Yeah, I love that. It's also an opportunity, at home. I mean, all these skills you can take right in home in your own home culture. Go ahead and share what you do and where everybody can find you and all that stuff if they're interested and they want to save, millions of dollars on the next business deal or not drink the $300,000 tea.
That actually is the tagline of a book that I'm working on right now, How Not to Lose $1 million in 30 seconds. But I have developed the culture spin method, which is, again, like I said, it's a boutique personalized method. You're writing it. I just have the template for you and take you through that. I do workshops. I do individual coaching. And I meet you where you are, and then I help you achieve your goals. So you can email me, Kristina with a K at crosscultureconnections.com or info at crosscultureconnections, plural, connections.com. And I can get this to you. In fact, I will, if your listeners want my cultural courage guide, I can send them a PDF if they send a request to me. And I have, I have that. Just go to info at crosscultureconnections.com and I'll send it to you. But it's really fun to meet people in any capacity. And I'm also, I've just started, a nonprofit version of my business because I think growth happens in travel the way, you probably agree, Jason, you cannot grow in the way that you grow in travel in any other capacity. So my nonprofit business is, the affiliate is working with university students or first generation university students, people who can't normally afford to travel abroad, to get them, to teach them cultural competency using my workshops, using my plan so that they are able to fulfill this and connect them with resources so that they financially can do this and expand their knowledge base to get this out of, because there's a socioeconomic groups that travel, and so not everyone does.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you for that. We'll link up to everything. A couple quick last things. There are two common cultural conundrums. That's my tongue twister for the day that we didn't discuss: culture shock and reverse culture shock. I mean, my thought is that with culture shock, everything you shared today is a way to mitigate that perhaps in some way. And maybe in reverse culture shock too. I'm just wondering, any thoughts around those two common occurrences?
Culture shock, plan on it. First
plan
of all.
on it.
Yes, but be accepting of it and recognize it. I mean, things are going to be different. And, this is one of the reasons you've got to be culturally competent. If language alone is not enough. Language, if you speak the language of the country, that's fabulous. That gives you an edge, but you also have to be culturally fluent. So you know how to handle the situation. This is how, you show up at Charles de Gaulle and you don't understand a word they're saying, even though you've been listening to, you've been on Babbel or using one of the other language apps. get ready. Just know that you're going to respond to that and then figure out, how am I going to act from that? And then reverse culture shock is very hard. When you come back home and you're looking at this after I've been, living in another country for a while, in Europe, for example, teaching in Europe, and then I come home and I'm living in the suburbs and we drive everywhere. We don't walk everywhere. And I'm like, what the heck, this is, everyone's driving to a store that is located, a half a mile away. This would be nothing. 3 blocks away, you drive. It's just coming back and taking the best of the culture that you learned, you bring it back to you. But it's hard because you have to also plan on the fact that you will be acting in a different way. And the people that know you and love you need to, they will be surprised at some of your actions. So just plan on both.
You become that eccentric person really quick just because you walked 3 blocks to get milk, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. People pulling over. Do you need a ride home?
What's she doing? She's walking to get milk. This is crazy. Paris really changed her.
Exactly. So, yeah, just plan on both and how you're going to do it. And I think that by, even the walking thing, when people notice that you're walking, okay, there's Christy walking to the store, that, I'd say, come with me. Let's go. Share the way of doing things differently when you get home.
Yeah. Last one. What is the maybe biggest is too strong of a word, but what is one of the revelations you had about your own culture that through your work you were able to kind of reveal it? You kind of like maybe it was blind, because we can be blind to a lot of our own sort of cultural ways. I don't know how you want to describe it. We just we exist there, we grow up in it, and then all of a sudden we leave and it's like, whoa, this is one of the big powerful aspects of travel. It's just like it's a mirror to your own culture and to yourself, along with a way to explore another culture. But yeah, for you, do you have anything that stands out?
I think that one of the biggest lessons that I've learned is how you carry yourself matters, and that you carry yourself differently in different places. And that's where, I still temper that. And I realize, okay, I get back into my way of being, but that's not necessarily going to translate to, when I go to Sydney necessarily, even if it's the same language, but I need to carry myself in a way that is respectful in that country and doesn't show arrogance. And so it's recognizing your sense of self, and that the way you carry yourself can demonstrate arrogance, which totally destroys the cultural bridge that you're trying to build.
Yeah, it's a really interesting topic, especially being an American abroad. I feel like, at least here, there's certain cultural values that I think people, they can admire in some ways, right? Like say the American can-do spirit or something like that. But if you walk around acting like you can do anything then that's different than the value. Now if you're embodying a certain value, you are perhaps destroying, you're tainting the value in some ways for the people you're interacting with in some ways, perhaps.
Yes, that's very well expressed. You're shutting doors that could be opened if you checked yourself.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your work, for continuing to open doors for people. And we'll link up to everything that we talked about in the show notes. And really great to meet you. I'd appreciate your time today. And let me know when you come back to Oslo.
It's been wonderful. Okay. Thank you so much, Jason. It's been a pleasure.
Take care. There you have it. Thank you to Dr. Kristina Wachter. Of course, one more time, her website, crosscultureconnections.com. And she did mention to me she can offer a free PDF to listeners with some of these tips in it. And you just have to email her at info@crosscultureconnections.com. She does coaching. She has some educational stuff. You can check it all out in the links in the show notes. Now, as promised, I'll leave you with a quote. I like this quote from Ray Bradbury. I'm going to share in a minute. First, I have to share this cultural faux pas. Like I said at the top, there's so many that I've committed over the years. We're doing the best we can. We don't understand all of the cultural nuances all the time as travelers. But even when you're in a culture for a long time, me living in Norway for many years, we had some friends over one day for a meal, and I think we were serving dessert. We had like, a big brunch sort of thing, eggs, bread, the whole nine. And everybody's pretty full. I guess we come out with this awesome dessert and I pile it onto my plate and everybody's putting it on. And our friend, the husband of a gal that my wife grew up with, I can't remember if he passed on the dessert or just put a little bit on his plate. And I was just sarcastically joking around. I said, "Oh, what? Are you watching your girlish figure?" It's just like an old school expression, whatever. And up to that point, we've been joking around and he's a funny guy. And it's not that he can't take a joke. It just didn't land because he didn't understand the reference. Of course, that's a sarcastic remark that people say in pop culture, movies, TVs, whatever. So I just, again, said it jokingly, not with any mean intent at all. But he had never heard that. And so he took it like, "Oh, what do I, what's wrong with like my body? Do I look like, and like I would be the last person to body shame somebody." So it was just an odd moment and, my bad. I mean, it was just a cultural reference from my culture, kind of like a joke, sarcastic thing that just didn't land. And I mean, he survived. It was okay. But my wife told me later that she kind of noticed that his demeanor sort of changed after that. Anyway, we're all good. I just, it was a cultural faux pas. I mean, what are you going to do? You make these, remarks, or you take these actions in real time, and it's not always thought out. And the way you might joke around with some of your friends or your family and your home culture might not land in the other culture that you're in. And in some ways that can be a challenge of living abroad because you kind of have to hold back and be aware, and which sometimes can feel like, oh, you're holding back a part of yourself. That's just life abroad in some ways. It's one of the things you kind of have to deal with. Like, people aren't going to get certain cultural references because they didn't grow up in the same culture you did. And that's a whole other topic. Anyway, thought I'd just share that story. If you want to share your own cultural mishap, feel free to leave me a voicemail. The link is in the comments. Speaking of voicemails, somehow my voicemail inbox was jammed up and I had not noticed a bunch of messages. So I just replied to everybody who has left me a voicemail with a personal reply, which is what I do. I'll reply to you personally with a voicemail back. I just want to say apologies to those that I missed, some messages from months ago. But anyway, everybody got a reply now. If you're listening and you were one of those people that left a voicemail months ago, then you can check. And I'm going to share some of these actually in upcoming episodes because there's some inspiring stories, some travel tips, and the like. So be on the lookout for some more listener voicemails. I have, quite frankly, it's been tough, lately, kind of making the podcast. I've been traveling, doing the parenting thing, got different projects going on, working on different things. And sometimes the podcast, it can be a solitary pursuit. I mean, even though I'm having these great conversations when they happen, but a lot of them are online, and that's totally cool. That's part of the deal. Travelers are all over the world. But then when it comes to making the rest of the show, a lot of it's kind of lonely, frankly. I'm just, pouring my heart out to you. So when I hear from you all out there, whether it's a voicemail, an email, and the like, it's so powerful for me because it's that listening community. It's you. It's the reason why I make this. And this is the thing that has been reinvigorating me, listening to these voicemails today, getting to respond to them, and to just be reminded that, hey, this has always been a community-powered show. It will continue to be that. And, in some ways, I want to get back to our roots. I want to share some of these voicemails so you can hear from voices in the community. And if you want to be one of those voices, whether you want to answer the question about sharing a cultural mishap or a travel tip or anything you want to share, just your story, your journey, all of it matters. Your story matters. Sharing it matters. And it will matter to other people to hear it as well. So if you've been putting it off, feel free, because I'm on top of the inbox now. I know I'm all caught up and I'm on top of it. So please feel free to do that. Okay. Sorry, I didn't expect to go on that sort of personal soliloquy, let's call it. Can you have a soliloquy? Can it be a personal soliloquy? A soliloquy is personal in nature. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up with a quote from Ray Bradbury. You don't have to burn books to destroy a culture. Just get people to stop reading them. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time. Peace and love to you and yours. Cheers.
This podcast has been brought to you by ZeroToTravel.com. Ideas and advice to make your travel dreams a reality.